Hello, and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And today I am very happy to welcome Agni Lakshya. Hello.
Hello. Pleasure to meet you, Anna.
And it's wonderful that you're here. You have written a book called The Kriya Serpent Yogi: How to Transform Ordinary People into Extraordinary Humans. Well, how could I resist a title like that?
Indeed, that was the idea.
Um, I guess maybe it might be. I'm intrigued by this concept of new humans or going from the ordinary to the extraordinary. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Right now, our planet, humanity, is undergoing a transition. We're transitioning from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And every time we transition in an age, there is a lot of new things that come into our world and transform it in a completely different way. We can go back to the beginning of the age of Pisces, where we had Christianity being born, and that transformed the world in a very significant way. I think we can all agree with that. And something very similar is going to happen this time. Some of the new things that are coming into our world are these new humans. They're not necessarily any different from the rest of us. They're simply going to have more of their DNA activated. And that's going to give them access to our inherent abilities, or what they call in India cities. Think, telepathy, things of that nature. And those new humans are here for a purpose. They are here to help us transition into this new age. The new age, without going into too much detail, is going to be a lot about embracing technology and spirituality and recreating our world into a vision of a galactic species, right? So we're no longer going to be planet bound. We're going to actually launch out into the universe and play a significant role in other species evolution down the road, not immediately. And so we're at a tipping point in our evolution. I think when we look at our last 100 years and the technological innovations that we have created and now take for granted, was really just the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more coming. But right now, our world is still using a lot of archaic processes, archaic ideas. And from that, the technology becomes a danger as opposed to something beneficial. And so the new humans are going to be the ones that are going to be spiritually connected, and they're going to have that wisdom from a lot of past lives to apply to the technology and the changes in our world, so that we can recreate it, so that it does, so our technology does not become a danger, but actually becomes a benefit for not just us, but for the planet as a whole.
I'm glad that you mentioned the dangers, because from where I'm sitting at the moment, I'm not thrilled by what I'm seeing in terms of the technology that's coming out and how it's being used. So it's good to hear that what you're talking about is humanity with the wisdom to use these very powerful and all-encompassing tools.
Yes, and it for those of us who have access to past lives, a lot of us have memories of being on other worlds far more advanced than this one. And that wisdom that we had in those past lives, we can bring forward to help us navigate this, really difficult time, this transition between being, basically a primitive human to being an enlightened species in our galaxy. And that is why the new humans, they're basically a lot of very old souls that are coming again back to Earth to bring that wisdom with them so that we can make the transition. But let's be honest, there's a lot of newer souls or less evolved souls who are still here, and they They see a new technology and their first thought is, how can I make that into a weapon, right? And unfortunately, that is still the case, and it's probably going to be for another couple hundred years until we have more of the new humans manifest and begin to take over from the old guard, as it were. And so it's going to take a bit of time, and I agree with you. It is scary. Um, I think our nuclear weapons are the cautionary tale, right? And while I'm not going to sit here and blast my country for using it in World War II at the time, I think the decision made some sense, but that's not something that we want to see ever happen again. And that is the danger. It's going to always be a present danger. And so imagine, I just put it recently in a blog, imagine these people getting a hold of things like anti-gravity. We can only imagine what they're going to do. They're going to drop something large on their enemy, right? And so there's just a lot of new tech that's coming out, and they're not capable of handling it because their first thought is, let's make a weapon out of it. And we have to change that entire thinking before we can really get a handle on it and move forward. I see technology, and my first thought is, how can we use this to benefit the world, right? How can we solve the problems that we have and make people's lives better? And but that's unfortunately not what a lot of people think when they see that new technology.
Indeed. And looking at nuclear weapons, something that I never thought I would say, it looks like child's play compared to what's coming out now. It's in terms of the new technology and the breadth of what can be done with it in a destructive sense is beyond anything that we would ever wish to see. So it's good that you're saying, yep, but this is a temporary blip and it will all come out in the wash.
Well, that's the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah.
We just got to make sure that they don't destroy it all before we get to that point. And
That
so,
that was
part
my
of that, yeah, part of that is when we awaken through Kundalini, which my book, The Kriya Serpent Yogi, really is about. We understand the truth of things. We understand ourselves, our place here, and our future that we're heading towards. It makes it far easier for us to be able to manifest things. And that's a very real thing. And people in the esoteric or new age community are very aware of that. But it takes a large collective, or at least larger than we have now, to make that manifestation occur. That's a project I'm going to be working on this year, later in the year, to develop a global manifest project website where we begin to gather people and collectively begin that manifestation. I'm not the only one involved in that. There are others that have been doing that as well, I know. But I think at some point, I think we're going to start as tiny islands, each building our own padre. And then at some point, we're going to merge all together to have a comprehensive manifestation. And that's how we stop them from destroying the planet. Because let's be honest, if we left it completely in their hands and to chance, it's not going to go well. I think there's just too much evidence of that. So we will slow them down by interfering, by using our innate abilities to manifest in this reality. And at some point, that tipping point will be reached where we can manifest the world we truly want. And keep in mind, these older, less evolved souls, and I'm not saying they're bad. They're just not for the new age. They're the old age, and there was reasons we had to fight, right? I mean, survival was was an imperative, but that's gone, right? We are now in a point where we have the ability to control our food, our power, our lives, our health. I mean, that kind of power changes us in a very dramatic way. And so we're no longer living, a subsistence living, right? We are now in a age where we can control the things that used to control us. And so that's really the power that we have, is to be able to say, hey, I don't have to go out this week and start hunting to find food for the next week. Instead, I'll just have Uber Eats or DoorDash deliver it to me, and then I'm going to stay here and I'm going to focus on my Kriya Serpent yoga and begin to make that change in the world. So we've been freed up to begin to explore our spirituality, not just our intellectual capacity.
I would say that although that is true, um, if we are to develop a truly spiritual awareness, then we have to consider what is going into our bodies. And that means looking at the processed stuff, which is part of the new technology, with a very careful eye as to what we are actually putting into our bodies and how dead it is when it is so divorced from nature. So I think we do have to be careful of that.
Oh, clearly, and that will be part of the change as we move forward. Um, right now, a lot of that stuff that we're eating, consuming, is preventing us from fully realizing our potential clearly. And as the new humans begin to manifest, begin to awaken, and we're already seeing that, right? The vegan movement is clearly a classic case of new humans beginning to make transformations. And we're seeing that all over. And like I said, little pockets here, little pockets there. It takes time and it's going to take many decades, maybe 100 or 200 years before we can make these full transitions into that new world. But you're correct. I think it's the poison that we put in our body is really unfortunate. And I've moved in my own life, not necessarily to vegan, but I have moved to I want fresh. I don't want canned, box, or anything else, and I feel so much better because of that. Of course, there's still GMOs, and we don't really fully understand, I think, the ramifications of that long term. But those are the kind of things that we're going to gain the wisdom as we proceed and innovate and learn. And we'll be able to cross those things off. I always tell my students that if you were to go back to the, say, early 1970s when I was a kid, I go, you can't understand the depth of pollution and trash that was everywhere. I used to tell them I would walk down streets, main streets, and I lived in the suburbs. This was not city. And there was trash everywhere. It was like I was walking through ankle deep trash at all times. And I said, and the pollution, I said, the rivers in the city where, or, the city I grew up in, they were so polluted from the factories that you could not eat the fish from the rivers. And they always warned people, don't swim, don't eat the fish. And I thought, these are our rivers. Why can't we enjoy them? And I actually worked at a lab in high school doing tests on a lot of the stuff coming out of these factories, and it was terrible. Well, fast forward now and 50 years later, and we have a significant decrease in the pollution, a significant decrease in the trash. You walk around my neighborhood, my city, you rarely see trash, rarely. And that is a huge tidal shift in just 50 years. And so that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But when it does finally happen, it's going to be truly amazing. For us, not going to be in this lifetime, but we need to begin to prepare so that our children and our children's children begin to have that world manifest. And it's a process.
So tell us about how we begin to, within ourselves, connect to our souls and bring in that kundalini energy that you talk about.
Right. In the book, The Kriya Serpent Yogi, I outlined 4 levels essentially to the practice. In the first level, it's about the basics of meditation, learning the basics of meditation, but more fundamental to that is the concept of stillness of mind. And it is so imperative to achieve that stillness of mind before you move onward. And I say it in the book, and I recently just rolled out my online studio, and I'll say it in those classes as well. It is so fundamental to success in the later levels that you really cannot move on until you find this. Well, these techniques come from Zen Buddhism, right? Where it's all about quieting the mind, right? Quieting the monkey mind. And those are so important before we begin talking about chakras and energy. Because for most people starting out, and I was the same way when I started out, I was not this enlightened person. I was intellectually very capable, but spiritually not very adept. And so for me, I was a single parent, full time job, and also writing novels. And I was so busy that my mind was constantly going. I could never really stop it. Only when I fell asleep would it stop. And even then, the dreams could be rather, exciting. And so for me, when I started meditation, that was the hardest hurdle to get over, was that stillness. Once you acquire the stillness, then you can begin to sense the energies that are inherent in our bodies. And the first step we do is go through and identify each of the chakras, the main chakras, which are energy centers or energy controllers. And being able to sense them, understand what they do, and begin to sense the energy moving between them is that next stage in your evolution to awakening. Kundalini is still not there, right? We're still just doing preparatory work. All of this is in level one. Finally, in the very end of level one, we begin the process of going through the mantras for Kriya Serpent Yoga and feeling the energy that happens as we intone these sounds. And so from there, level two is all about stimulating your Kundalini. And then level three is about identifying your ego and isolating it. And then the advanced level is all about, okay, you now understand a lot of reality. You may not be fully awakened, but you understand your purpose. And now you can begin working on that purpose as you continue your evolution. So it's quite the process. It's very step by step. And I think very well laid out, thought out. And timing is the key thing. You might have gone to an ashram in India years ago and studied there for multiple years and still never experienced Kundalini. In my practice, I believe, especially new humans, it's going to happen, within 3 years. They're going to not just experience Kundalini, connect to their soul, find their divine purpose, and then begin laying out a strategy for how to actually accomplish that purpose in this lifetime.
I feel that a lot of people are following their purpose without realizing it. So are we making a distinction between people who are naturally inclined to follow their heart, follow their instincts, and be doing, by virtue of doing that, really be fulfilling their soul's purpose, and then others who are actually aware that that's their soul's purpose and that that's what they're doing? There's a consciousness that's brought to it.
Yes, I think the people who are ego bound oftentimes do things that seem maybe counter to their personalities. I think that is their soul leaking into their ego and directing them in a specific direction. I look back at my life now that I'm awakened and I realize all of it was leading me down the path, even though I was completely oblivious to it. I went into engineering in college and then worked as an engineer for 12 years in the tech industry, and then became a teacher after I got washed out in the 2000 dot-com crash. And all of those things, being an engineer, being a teacher, really led me to what I am now, a yogi who is trying to instruct people on the mechanical aspects of how do I stimulate Kundalini so I can awaken. And it all built off of, that past that I was led down. And I didn't know anything about divine purpose or even think about such things for a long, long time. I didn't even understand or believe in incarnation. I believed in a God, a source, but that was about it. So yeah, I think that there are a lot of people. My dad is a classic case. not a highly spiritual person, but he was a healer. He was a doctor. And it was absolutely his purpose. He had a massive coronary when he was 48, should have died, but just happened to be in the hospital when it happened. I don't think that's coincidence. Got 5 bypasses. Doctors told him he'd live 5 years. And so at that point, they were saying in his mid 50s he would pass away. He lived to be 84 years old. And it's because he was doing, divine work, his purpose, which was to heal people. And he loved that. It was truly who he was. So no, you don't have to be awakened to be doing your purpose. But what I'm talking about is a bit more specific. It's about the change we're going through and how we're going to transform this world. And there are people like myself who are being brought back right now, and they need to know that divine purpose, not just generally, oh, I'm a healer or something like that, but oh, where is medicine going in the next 100 years? How are we going to manage that so we don't have epidemics, things like that? So it's much more specific, and it's very much tied to this transitional period right now, before the new age of Aquarius. And we're going to start seeing more and more people begin to awaken. They're going to find their purpose. And we're already seeing part of this, right? Like I said, the vegan movement is an example. A lot of the stuff around diversity, where people are understanding, the differences that we all have and being able to celebrate them as opposed to looking at them as some sort of bad thing. All of these things are part of that movement towards this new age. And more of the new humans that are manifesting are going to need to awaken to be very specific about what they're going to do. There's another piece to this, which is I talk about a little bit in the book, and I also on my website sort of, talk about it. But I'm a big fan of Dr. Stephen Greer, who does CE5 Contact, which is basically close encounters of the fifth kind, which is telepathic contact with extraterrestrials. And the reason I have to mention this is because we are going to get a lot of assistance from them in managing our technology. When we set off the nuclear weapons, that was a warning call to the people in the galaxy. Hey, they've reached a certain point, and they're either going to destroy themselves or they might come and destroy us. So we need to be very tied in onto them and make sure that we help them manage that process and transition. So the new humans need to understand that, yes, we're not alone. Not only are there celestial and spiritual guides that are going to help us, there's soon going to be extraterrestrial guides that are helping us. Here in America, we're heavily involved right now with trying to get our Congress to begin fully disclosing all of the aspects of our government involvement in this. And when that disclosure occurs, this is going to be a tidal shift in our world. And I think that's when we're going to really begin to see a lot of new humans begin to manifest and awaken so that they can help us manage that. Most people, my parents would be a classic case. When full disclosure comes, they're going to freak. They're going to just say devil, demon, whatever, and that will be the end of it. And that's not really what's happening, unfortunately. But they're just not ready for it. And so we're going to have to be patient and wait.
Question, and that is that if indeed there are extraterrestrials involved with our governments, should we not be seeing a more enlightened approach coming from them instead of what is currently on offer?
Yeah, that would have been my natural prediction as well. Oh, okay, because I come, I'll be honest, I come from a lot of sci-fi stuff, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie moved me in a very significant way when I was a kid. And that's how I thought it was going to roll out. It was going to be, oh my gosh, we're going to welcome them. It's going to be this peaceful, uh, meeting, and they're going to help guide us slowly and methodically. Well, we're not seeing that, and I think the reason is pretty simple. There is still a lot of greed and a lot of fear in the world. And so when they see someone come to us that is technologically more advanced, their first thought was, we need that technology. We can use it as weapons. We can use it as defense. We're still in that mindset, and it's so hard to shift out of it. I mean, World War II wasn't that long ago, and we have that, cultural memory still embedded within us. For us, Vietnam was very traumatic for our culture here in America, as well as Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we still have a very warrior-like mindset. And I think the powers saw that, and that's how they began to approach their relationship with the extraterrestrials. I can only tell you from my own contact and conversations I've had, that is what they seem to be indicating, is that the people of this world that are in power and have been working with the extraterrestrials to acquire technology have turned it into weapons. And they've even begun, Dr. Greer talks about this too on his podcast, but they've even begun to use those weapons against the extraterrestrials so that they can acquire more. So we're really going down a dark path with this, which is why Dr. Greer and a lot of us are really pushing disclosure. Because once it's fully disclosed, those criminal activities of those using it against our galactic neighbors would have to cease. You would no longer be capable of doing that. I think we're getting close, but it's going to be hard to say how that's really going to fully end up. But I think I always take Dr. Greer's optimism, which is, we can manifest this. We can manifest this disclosure, and we can change the narrative with it. And I'm very focused on that. My own personal blog, childzero.com. I have talked about disclosure. I've talked about ET presence and guidance that they provided over millennia. And so it's something that's near and dear to me. And I'm very excited that we're going to have disclosure fairly soon. It'll be in my lifetime, our lifetime for sure.
I think the key here also is that irrespective of what people might think about ET guiding, not guiding, existing, not existing, the important thing here is our own participation and in the manifestation of something better. And I think what you are doing is helping people to understand that they have a part to play in creating something better. We do need to do this for ourselves also. It's not about some external force coming in and rescuing us, because as you've just said, in these cases where ETs have been involved, they have discovered that our beneficent rulers are actually turning against them. So this we do have a part to play in this. We are the cavalry, as I often say, and it's down to us. So your book is another wonderful piece of that beautiful human puzzle that we are creating.
Thank you. I came from a Judeo-Christian background, and I never name which specific denomination, but they were very focused on, it's all about Jesus coming, saving us. That's it, right? And the problem with that is it's very myopic, and then it's also very much an excuse to not worry about pollution, not worry about what we eat, not worry about all of the things that we're doing that are wrong, because it doesn't matter. Jesus is going to come and he's going to just take us away, and that's it. And I write about that pretty extensively, not just in the book, but also on my blog. This is not a throwaway planet. This is a gem. This is a rare and unique aspect of our universe, and it should be revered and treated as such. And unfortunately, in my country in particular, where there's this strong revivalist movement, they are ignoring all of that in favor of the end is here and Jesus is going to just come and take us away. Well, they're right in this sense that they are going away because they're not taking care of this planet. And so they are no longer welcome here. They will be going away, and the new humans are going to replace them. The more enlightened souls are going to come back, and we're going to begin that manifestation and transition into the new world. And unfortunately, it's same with any transition in life and in nature. It can be violent, it can be challenging, and you never know which way it's going to go. But that is how we evolve. And so I'm actually excited about it, but there are others that are absolutely terrified by it because they just don't understand what's on the other side, that what potential we can have. When you can have memories of a past life on a world that was peaceful, very technologically advanced, you have a completely different perspective of where we're heading. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't have that vision. And so it's difficult for them. And all they see is, oh my gosh, these more advanced technological species are coming to our world. What do they want? And they're afraid and they begin to lash out. We're going to have a lot of that for a while. And then eventually we're going to manifest the new world because we're going to have I don't want to say the majority, but we're going to have a plurality that is sufficient to begin really manifesting. But, if you've been watching the politics in my country, we are clearly going through a difficult period where there are two opposing sides. I don't want to say that I pick one side or the other. I tend to be a moderate, but they all have their vision of what the future is going to be. And unfortunately, neither side, in my opinion, have the correct vision. And so the new humans are going to come and they're going to begin to craft that vision and begin manifesting that vision.
I
It's
don't
not about
think
control, it's about self understanding, self awakening, because then you're not going to do the behaviors that everyone's complaining about. You cannot be awakened and be a tyrant. You cannot. It's just impossible. So that's what the Kundalini is all about. Awaken the new humans, get them moving in the right direction to work as a collective and begin that manifestation.
I would say we can't afford to be waiting for new humans. We have to be the new humans. So again, the process of meditation, stilling the mind, and that you've outlined is a very important part of that. So thank you very much, Agni.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time and your book, the title of which is The Kriya Serpent Yogi, How to Transform Ordinary People into Extraordinary Humans. And that's the promise that is held in the book. Thank you again. And thank you all for watching. Next time, we're going to be looking at the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Thank you so much and have a great week. Bye-bye.